How to be rich. We live in a country where over half, or at least half, of the top 1% of the wealthiest people in the world live. We live in a country that even the poorest 5% of Americans are still better off than 2/3 of the rest of the world. The fact of the matter is, we are rich. Can we just admit it? I mean, tall people admit that they're tall. IT people admit that they're kind of geeky, you know? Computer people, they will drive around in a car. This is the Geek Squad. Artsy people admit that they're artsy, their room's a mess, their car's a mess, and they're happy, you know? They're happy with things. Introverts don't mind telling you that they're introverted. Extroverts can't wait to tell you, right? The fact of the matter is that we are rich. And last week I told you that I bet your bottom dollar that you're rich. We looked at that statistic that if you make $34,000 annually, you're in the top 1% of the wage earners in the world. And the goal from that, and just by the way, if you missed last week, we're hoping to get that video up on our website so that you see that. We were able to video that. The audio came through quite well. Video was okay. Mostly it's just me, which I guess is okay. But we're hopefully to get that up on the website so you can catch up in this series that we're in on how to be rich. And I said last week that the goal was not that we would feel guilty. After all, we're in church, right? We don't want to feel guilty in church. Not to feel guilty, but to feel what? You remember that? Not to feel guilty, but to feel responsible. I don't want you to feel guilty. I want you to feel responsible. So as we continue this series, and with a message I'm calling Making Ends Meet, and I told you last week that we're going to get into what Paul tells Timothy about how to be rich. Tells him what to tell rich people. I'd like to do an illustration first. I know I said we're going to get there, but I'd like to do an illustration. What do we mean by making ends meet? What do you think of? What do we mean? You've heard that title, right? Or you've heard that phrase, making ends meet. What do we mean? We can pay our bills. We have enough money to pay the bills. I need a volunteer. Anybody willing to help me out? I want somebody other than myself. See, I've got some ends up here that I'm wondering. I don't think they can meet, but I don't want to be the one. Mark, you're going to help me. So, can you just demonstrate how? Can you reach over to that? And then I want you to pull the speaker off. Right?
I need to reach that one?
Yeah, can you can't do it? Is there a way you can do it? Maybe a tool, I don't know. This isn't very long, but maybe it'll get you a little bit.
You grab it and brought it to me.
No, I can't help you. I want you to demonstrate how. We're trying to make ends meet. Will that give you enough? A little bit
I might
for
be able to do it. I might be able to make that one swing. That way. That's what I would do. I don't want to break anything.
All right. Anybody nervous?
Yeah.
Give him a hand, huh? Sometimes in life it's frustrating to try to make ends meet. I mean, Mark knew how to do it. I don't know how many of us you thought that you would do it that way, but Mark knew what to do. Mark had to let go of one rope so that he could get the other and let the other one come back in time. See, many rich people have such a grip on their money, on their wealth. And it may not just be cash money or land, it may be just stuff. They have such a grip on it. To think about letting it go raises too much anxiety. So much anxiety that you're always trying to make ends meet, but you're never succeeding. Why? Because they don't know how to be rich. Rich people that aren't good at being rich or don't know how to be rich lack one thing that makes them feel rich. One thing that they lack that makes them feel rich in order to recognize that they're rich, in order to then feel responsible with their riches, the one thing they lack is margin. See, rich people often lack margin, which is key to feeling rich. If you don't feel rich, you don't know you're rich, and take responsibility for being rich. Margin is that buffer between having the freedom to spend combined with the discipline not to. Having the freedom to spend, having something to spend, but the discipline not to spend. I felt most rich when I was in high school. Why? I didn't make a lot of money in high school. It wasn't like I was a millionaire in high school. I'm still not a millionaire. But I was living at home. I was driving my parents' car. I was eating my parents' food. Right? But I had a lot of margin. I didn't have a lot of expenses, but I had comparatively a lot of money. I could go out to the movies with my friends, or grab a burger, or go do something with them, because I had a lot of margin. I had never felt more rich. Things are different now. I still see myself as rich. But having that margin makes you feel rich. When having more than you need, combined with the discipline to discern between needs and wants, helps you to feel rich. And the key to feeling rich is that margin, and then knowing that the feeling rich helps you to recognize you're rich so that you can take appropriate responsibility for your riches. So if you want to feel rich, don't compare yourself to others who have more money than you, or to people who have the same amount of money as you do. If you really want to feel rich, think about this. Imagine yourself with your financial pressures, going to a third world country in some of the poorest areas and sitting down with one of those residents and trying to explain your financial pressures. It seems a bit ridiculous, doesn't it? It would be kind of embarrassing to try to explain what financial pressure you feel compared to their state. Kind of ridiculous. So if you want to feel rich, downsize. Get rid of things until you feel margin. Now, if the thought of that sends chills up your spine, that's one more indication that you're rich. But like many of us, you're just not very good at it. So how do we be rich? Instead of turning and running away from what I just said, let's turn to 1 Timothy chapter 6, where Paul tells his protege, Timothy, to give a message to the people that he's teaching. 1 Timothy chapter 6, we're going to look at verse 17. He says, command those who are rich. He says, command those who are rich. Not suggest to them, or ask them if it's okay, or encourage the rich. He says to this young man, Timothy, command those who are rich. Not just if they feel rich, or they look rich, but command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant. See, when I read this, for a long time I've read this, I've known this passage has been in there. It's command those who are rich. I go, oh, well, that doesn't apply to me. I'm not rich. You know, so I just kind of blow by that. But what makes a person rich? What makes a person rich? Certain dollar amount? No. What is it? What makes a person rich? What's your... If you feel rich? What makes a person rich?
We think of being rich as having money.
As having money, okay.
But we're rich in a lot of other things.
Sure, yeah, you're right. We're rich in a lot of other things, but thinking about money, how much money does it take us to be rich?
Just a little more.
Just a little bit more? Yeah, let's use that. Just a little bit more than you need. If you have more than you need, you're rich. If you have more than you need, you are rich. See, I'm learning that. And I hope you're learning that. So when we read this passage that says, command those who are rich, we don't just blow by it. I know better than that now. And I hope that you know better than that by now. That we're rich. And we have a responsibility with our riches. He says, don't be arrogant. That's your first line, or first fill-in. Don't be arrogant. Command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant. How did he know? How did he know that that would be the temptation? For them to be arrogant. What's the natural tendency for people who gain wealth? It's to become arrogant. They tend to think of themselves as more intelligent, more valuable. I mean, intelligent, you know, it's like, we kind of do that in our culture. It's like the richest people in the circle, they're like the most, they must be smart, they're rich. We just kind of associate those two. And we kind of puff that up. So they think they're more intelligent and maybe more valuable, more better. I just wanted to do that to the grammarians. You know, it's like nails in a chalkboard. Right? Think they're better than others? Don't we see that today? I mean, we have a phrase like this. It says, he's worth a ton of money, but you'd never know it. Right? Have you ever said that? He's worth a ton of money, but you never know it. Why? Because when people have money, usually you know it. People have money, people are rich, wear it one way or another. They show it in one way or another. Often through their arrogance. There's a guy in Proverbs, I've read Proverbs a lot. I'm not sure really who this guy named Agur is. But he's had some pretty positive, pretty wise words when it comes to finances. He says this in Proverbs 30:8 and 9. Give me neither poverty or riches. Give me just enough to satisfy my needs. For if I grow rich, I may deny you and say, who is the Lord? It's pretty wise. Give me just what I need. Because if I am rich, I may be tempted to be arrogant and say, who is the Lord? You see the danger of being rich? Agar knew it way back in time. Paul knew it in the New Testament. Do you know it now? Do you see the danger? Do you see the temptation to become arrogant? There's a temptation to become less and less dependent on God, the richer one becomes. The more your needs are met, the more riches you obtain, the greater tendency toward becoming arrogant. Why is that? Because what you see with your physical eyes, when we're seeing with our own eyes, we see that we have a need. We have a need for food. And so money provides us breakfast. Cornflakes and puffed wheat. Not sugar smacks. But it provides us breakfast. We have a need for shelter. So money provides us a modest apartment. Then our needs are met and we have these things called wants. We have desires, and money fulfills those wants too. But then we want more. So money's fulfilling our needs and it's fulfilling our wants, but our wants continue to grow, and they will grow, right? They grow and they grow. We want more and more. That is the one-word vocabulary of our wants. Your wants, your appetite has one word vocabulary. More. And so the more we have, the more we want. And our wants are that appetite, that craving. Appetites are never finally or fully satisfied. What happens to an appetite when you feed it? It grows. You feed it and it grows. It's like that plant in Little Shop of Horrors. You know, it just grows and grows. That's right, you guys don't. A lot of people in here don't watch movies. That was a bad analogy. I'm sorry. But an appetite, it grows. That plant just kept saying what? Anybody that said that? Feed me, Seymour, right? It just feed me. That's what an appetite does. It says, feed me. That appetite is fed more and more. As it's fed, more and more becomes arrogant to the point of putting its wants. Listen, hear me here. The appetite gets fed more and more to the point it becomes arrogant to put its wants ahead of the needs of others. Its wants ahead of the needs of others. Which is in stark contrast to the attitude that Paul says that we're supposed to have. What's the opposite of arrogance? Humility. Paul said your attitude should be the same as that of who? Christ. Yeah, who had everything. He had equality with God. He said, Jesus had equality with God. He said, it wasn't something that Jesus was willing to hold on to grasp. He made himself nothing. He put what could be his desires to maybe have it some other way. He put his desires to the side and put your need ahead of his own. That's the attitude that we should be having. Not to be arrogant. See, when you primarily see money as satisfying your appetite, it becomes what you see as the source of your hope. When you see it with those eyes, when you see money's providing you these things, you see it as the source of your hope to meet more and more than of your desires. And Paul addresses that in his second warning. He says, command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain. So don't put your hope in wealth. Don't put your hope in wealth. Andy Stanley describes this as a migration of hope. I prefer to think of it as a transfer of hope. We talk about our money, we talk about transferring our wealth. Either we make a transfer in your bank from one account to another, or we transfer our wealth to other places. Paul says, don't let your hope be transferred. Don't let your hope get transferred to your money. Those who are rich will tend to put their hope in their wealth rather than in God, who is the ultimate provider. It doesn't make any sense, but that's what rich people who don't know how to be rich do. See, God's chief competitor, there's good and evil, and ultimately God wins between good and evil, and there's certainly a reality of the enemy. But on this earth, the way things are, the chief competitor for your heart is not this demonic figure that's trying to capture your soul. It's not like people are saying, God or Satan, I don't know. Or Halloween versus Christmas, I don't know. The chief competitor for your heart is money. The chief competitor for your heart, the one that's battling against God, and I think it's a tactic of the enemy, is money. Jesus was right when he said, you cannot serve both God and mammon, or the God of money. You can't serve both God and money. Two masters will not work. You love the one, and you'll hate the other. See, money makes promises it can't keep. Right? Money makes promises that only God can keep. First thing that money promises is happiness. Money promises happiness. If I only had the hat to match the dress, to match the shoes, then I'd be happy. If I only had a little bit more, I could get the season tickets, and then I would be happy. If I only had a little more, I could upgrade from a flip phone to a smartphone. Right? If I had a little more, I could get an apartment in that part of town, or I could get a house with 3 bathrooms instead of 2. Then I would be happy. But what happens to all that stuff? Does that bring happiness? It gets old. You get used to it. You may feel happy for a little bit, but what do you want then? More. It promises happiness, but it doesn't provide. Money promises it, but it can't deliver. Money also promises security. But rich people still have health problems. Rich people still have relationship breakdowns. Rich people still lose loved ones. Our security cannot be met in money. It feels like we're secure. We got money as a cushion, safety net, which is a good principle, but it gives us a false sense of security. How quickly would your money fade in a medical crisis? You can't buy your way out of cancer. You can't buy your way out of Alzheimer's. You can't buy a fix for a broken marriage. Money promises security, but it cannot deliver. Money promises only what God can deliver. We become deceived when we put our hope in wealth. So Paul says, don't let your hope be put in wealth. Don't put your hope in wealth. And a little bit earlier in that chapter, you can see in verses 9 and 10, he says, those who want to get rich fall into this temptation and a trap and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into a ruin and destruction. For the love of money, putting your hope in money, is a root of all kinds of evil. Some people eager for money have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. See, money can't deliver on its promises. Only God can. And so that's why Paul says to put your hope in God. Those who want to to put your hope in God. Command those who are rich not to be arrogant, not to put their hope in wealth, but to put their hope in God. And I don't have a slide for you to fill in, but I think you can figure that out. Put your hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our, say it with me, enjoyment. God's not down on you having stuff. God's not down on you having wealth. God wants your joy. God has given you things for your enjoyment. He's the ultimate provider. Every good and gift comes from Him. So we don't despise the gift. We welcome it and use it accordingly. Not guilt, but responsibility. Paul knew the temptation to be arrogant and to put your hope in wealth. But he says, don't put your hope in riches, but in the one, the only one, who can provide everything. I mean, that's like keeping the golden egg and putting it on the shelf and roasting the goose for dinner, right? I mean, that wouldn't make sense. God's the one who's providing the wealth. Why put your hope in the wealth? Here's what I want to close with. I want to close with a declaration. And now, you may or not be able to say this honestly or truthfully, but hopefully you'll be able to, if you just participate with us, maybe you can say it and hopefully believe it, because I think it's a game changer. This declaration I want us to make is, I will not put my hope in riches, but in Him who richly provides. I will not put my hope in riches, but in Him who richly provides. So let's say this together. We're going to practice just a little bit, okay? Now, if you feel like you're lying, it's okay. You probably lied before. We want to lie in church or anywhere else. But we try to commit ourselves, because I think this is what most of you would want. All right, let's try this once through. I will not put my hope in riches, but in Him who richly provides. Very good. I will not put my hope in riches. Now we're gonna read it again, and we're gonna have a little fun. We're gonna get a little attitude with the word riches. Okay? I will not put my hope in riches. Like that? Like, who would put their hope in riches? I mean, riches are so uncertain. The stock market could crash. The value of the dollar could go down to where you have no idea. I mean, a medical crisis could come and wipe that away. Somebody could come in and steal the wealth that you have. I mean, when we really think about it, riches, the money, the problems that money can solve is pretty small, isn't it? I mean, one of the guys that I used to work for, he said, if money can solve your problems, they're probably not problems. If money can solve the problem, it's probably not a problem. And that may be more in our first world, in the United States or parts of North America, that may not quite apply in some of the other areas, because money could solve some problems. But there's a very small amount of problems that money can solve. So why would we put our hope in that? I mean, most of us know the things that are most important, money can't buy them. Money can't solve them. So why would we put our hope in riches? Why would we do that? It wouldn't make sense. It's crazy. Who in their right mind would put their hope in riches? So I want you to have that attitude. Okay? You can even do like a, or, you know, whatever you got, you know. Maybe think back when you're in high school. Really? Riches? I will not put my hope in riches. All right, so let's try it. Right? I will not put my hope in riches. Okay. I think we can do better. All right? You got some practice. Maybe here, let's just give a little pause. Like, you know, just pause there. Huh. Riches. Okay? One more time. And we'll read it all the way through. I will not put my hope in riches, but in Him who is Christ. Amen. That's where our hope needs to be.